everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Roll Call, where we make a level 3 D&D 5.5e character using the 5.5 rules. As always, we have used a random number generator to determine the species and the class of our character today. And today we are making a human druid. Yes, human, so exciting, because, when you're in a fantasy game, why would you want to be anything other than human? I kid. If you want to be a human, be a human. No one should ever stop you from being the character that you want to play. For their background, let's start with the name. For the name, I chose randomly from the Polynesian name table in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, and it came out as Aina. Now, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, because I looked up how to pronounce it right, because I was tired of pronouncing these names wrong or very poorly. Everything I found came up as Aina, but none of them named Aina as a Polynesian name. So I don't know if that's right, but since D&D takes place in a fictional world, we're going to say it's Aina for now. And again, if that's wrong for the Polynesian version of that, then I'm deeply sorry, but I can only do so much when the internet is only giving me the English and Welsh origins for it. Their background is going to be a sailor. Of course, we are making a level 3 character. And for their subclass, as always, we're going to go with the subclass that really hasn't been seen prior to the 2024 handbook, which not every class has them, but in this case, we do have the Circle of the Sea Druid. And they're pretty much what they said. From the looks of it, it looks like they mostly do spell casting. But it's kind of weird, and you'll see why when we get into the actual subclass. Now, for their hit points, I calculated this ahead of time this time, so that I can make sure and double check my math. Starting HP at level 1 is 8 plus Constitution modifier, which they're going to end up having a 2 in their Constitution, so that's 10. And then each level is 5 plus Constitution modifier, so that's 7 for each level. So the total for that is going to be 24 max HP. And you know what, sure, we'll go ahead and put the current in there too. The hit dice for the Druid is going to be 1d8 per level. We are, of course, level 3, so it's going to be 3d8. Now, humans aren't particularly known for anything special. Their speed is 30 feet. Let's go ahead and fill in their stats. Their strength is going to be an 8, and that is, of course, a -1 to all that. But, Druids aren't exactly known for their athletics, so it's going to be fine. As always, we are going to the default standard array given in the book for that particular class. So this is just going to be what druids are if you don't give them bells and whistles. Dexterity is going to be 12, but we're going to put the +1 for a background on that. So that's going to end up being a 13, which means that they get a +1 in their dexterity. Constitution is going to be a 14, which means that's going to be a +2. Intelligence is going to be a 13, and that means that's going to be a +1. Wisdom is going to be 15, but then we're going to put our +2 in it. So that's going to be a 17, which gives us a +3 modifier. And then lastly, charisma is going to be our 10. That's just going to mean that we are not particularly, charismatic, but again, druids aren't exactly known for charisma, so it's fine. The starting, as usual, I'm not going to go into equipment, but the gold between the background and the class is 50 gold each way, so that's 100 gold total. So we'll go ahead and we'll put that in there. Now, for humans, I did decide to change this up. We're technically doing a custom background, because I didn't want to give a druid tavern brawler. I feel that's kind of wasted on a druid. This druid is going to have some melee ability, but I think I'm going to focus it more on spellcasting. So instead of giving it tavern brawler, I'm going to give it the lucky feat. And now what the lucky feat does is you have a number of luck points equal to your proficiency bonus, which, for these characters, all the proficiency at level 3 is always +2. It increases as you get higher in level, but for our purposes, it's +2. So this character is going to have 2 luck points. Now, what this means is that whenever you roll a d20, or whenever an enemy rolls a d20, you can use a luck point to either give yourself or an ally advantage. It can be your allies too. But essentially, any d20 roll, you can use a luck point to give it advantage or disadvantage. Uh, so it's a little less broken than it was in the past. Because the way it used to work in the past is whenever you rolled, uh, you could roll a third d20 with a luck point, and then it wasn't that you had to use the new roll, it's that you got to pick your roll. And so what would happen was, if you rolled with disadvantage, the way it was worded is, if you rolled with disadvantage, so let's say you rolled a 1 and a 15, or actually no, let's say you rolled a 1 and a 20. So normally with disadvantage, you would have to take that 1 because you have to take the lower of the two. But then you can say, hey, I want to use a luck point. So you roll the luck point. Let's say it comes out as 10. You know, maybe not even enough to pass the check or the damage or whatever. But the way lucky was worded is you got to choose which one you use, which means even though it was beat up by the 1 initially, you could take that 20. It doesn't work that way anymore. It's just, all it does now is give you advantage or give you disadvantage, or whoever's rolling the d20, because it can be an enemy, it can be an ally, it can be you. Uh, that's still pretty useful, though, you know, when you want to give yourself advantage, or, you know, give an attack disadvantage, or even if you have disadvantage on something, you can give yourself advantage in order to negate that disadvantage. So it's still a very nice perk to have, not as powerful as it used to be, but that's probably a good thing. Like Lucky was pretty broken, although usually not in the way people think. People thought it was just broken because you get to re-roll things. No, it's broken because you could take the dice that was completely negated by disadvantage. So, you know, Lucky rant over. Now, the next thing that we get as a human, actually, hold on, we should go into tools, because as a sailor, we get navigator's tools, which allows you to, you know, pretty much navigate. That's pretty self-explanatory. Now, as a human, and we also get, sorry, I know I'm jumping all over the place. So for skills, as a sailor, you get acrobatics, and then you get perception. Both very good ones to have as a druid. Dexterity is not going to be your main focus as a druid usually, unless maybe you're going for like a melee druid type thing. Again, we're going more for spellcaster. But it's nice to have. So, you know, we got some good acrobatics. But of course, our perception is always a nice thing to have. Like, it's going to be hard to surprise this character. Okay, so we got that. So next, as a human, you get the feat that allows you to basically take or you get the ability that allows you to have another origin feat, the versatile, the versatile trait. So what we're going to do is, it's technically a feat. We're taking the musician feat. I would say you don't necessarily have to write the musician feat here, because all it's really doing is giving you more tools. And in this case, you get 3 instruments of your choice. So we're going to go with a horn, and of course, naturally, I am going to flavor that as like a conch horn, because that's just as you do for a sea-themed character. I'm going to go with a ukulele. Now, you might be saying, but Sakrayo, ukulele's not in the player's handbook, the 2024 player's handbook. And to that I say, shut up, I can do what I want. The player's handbook list is by no means exhaustive for every instrument, and depending on the setting, like you're probably not going to necessarily get an electric guitar unless your DM's cool with that and gives you like a magic guitar that essentially sounds like an electric guitar. But you know, something like a ukulele is like a completely believable thing. So just let your characters have a ukulele. Let your players have a ukulele. And then we're also going to give them proficiency in the flute. Alright, let's see. And then as versatile, they get a skill. They get an additional skill that they can choose. So for this, I chose performance, mostly because I gave them those. Mostly because I gave them the musician feat. So I imagine this character as kind of someone who, you know, kind of just travels alone on a kayak. You know, they have some instruments. I definitely want their weapon to be their oar. And depending on how you want to do it, I imagine you can either, I imagine a kayak. So, you know, kayaks typically you have like the 2-sided oar where there's an oar on one side, so you go like that, and then you go on the other side. But you could also have the ore as just like the single ore, where go like that, but then you flip it over, and then you go like that. So it's basically the difference between a lightsaber and a double-bladed lightsaber. So I would say if you want like the single ore, you can make that a club. If you want the double ore, make that a quarterstaff. I don't see why any DM would not let you do that, but that's how I'm imagining this character. And of course, because it's the character and I'm therefore the DM, I'm going to let my character do this. Alright, so let's see. We got resourceful. Okay, on to the actual druid stuff here. Now, there's a lot to go into druid. We're going to start with saving throws, because that's always, the easiest one. You just check off intelligence, you check off wisdom, those are the saving throws you get as a druid. Let's see, we've got the hit dice. Tools. Well, not so much tools as weapons. You get light armor as a druid, and you get simple weapons as a druid. Now, the thing that used to happen with druids is that there used to be a rule that druids could not wear armor that was made of metal. They could use weapons that were made of metal, and that was fine, but not their armor. That rule has tossed out the window because that is a dumb and stupid restriction to have on a druid. And I mean, part of it is because, the flavor of, like, you want someone in touch with nature, and so it does make sense if you're, a nature person and you're going in there with, like, chainmail armor. But at the end of the day, it's like there's so many ways to flavor that as being not metal. You can say, I'm wearing armor made out of magic bark or something like that, and that's all fine. So in the end, it's light armor. Just let them wear the light armor. Let them flavor it however they want. It doesn't. It is something that in the end does not matter, and we're not interested in things that don't matter here. Alright, so we got that. So skills, out of the skills that druids offer, for this character, I'm going to go with animal handling. And let's face it, if you're a druid and you don't pick animal handling, what are you even doing? Like, what is the point of being a druid? Like, it's one of those things where, I feel like it's such a druid mainstay. Like, you don't have to take it, but why wouldn't you? Like you're a druid. You're all about nature and animals. Like, talk to animals. Well, speech to animals is a spell, but still, animal handling will help with that. Okay, let's see. So we got all of that. We got all of our skills. Next, okay. So here's where things. Oh, let's go into languages. Languages is another easy one. So languages, we're going to choose common because we are a human, and that common is kind of the human language, but like everyone speaks it. Next, we're actually going to give this character an exotic language. It's going to be primordial, but it's specifically going to be the Aquan dialect, because I imagine that as someone who is always in the water and has a connection to the sea, he can probably talk to water elementals. And the other thing that we get from being a druid is we can speak and write Druidic, which is a special druid language that only druids can understand. So now we are going to go into the druid stuff proper. So the first thing we have is spellcasting. Now, for spellcasting, you get 2 cantrips of your choice from the druid spell list. For this, I went with Mending, which Mending is another one of those spells where it doesn't exactly have a lot of combat uses, but it's a fun spell to have when it's like, oh, this thing is broken. And then you can just put the 2 halves together, and if it's a small enough break, you can mend it. The way I run Mending, because technically Mending, it's like you have to fix something that's like less than an inch. But the way I always flavor it is that if you have enough time, like if you're just doing the downtime and you're trying to repair something that's more than an inch, you can do that. It just, you have to spend your time like you're mending it section by section by section by section. That's how I recommend DMs do it, because otherwise, like, it's very limiting, and there's no reason why you can't mend something like a piece at a time. Like, you just mend 1 inch of it, and then mend 1 inch of it, and then mend 1 inch of it, and it would take time. And obviously, if it's something rather large, that's going to be, a little bit logistical, but allow your players to do it. Again, it's harmless. The next one we're going to get is a fun one to say, and that is Shillelagh. Shillelagh is a spell, and a lot of druids like it. And what it is you can use a club or a quarterstaff, and again, this is why I'm flavoring it, is as they're using the ore. And you can basically make a melee attack with it, but instead of using strength, because, we dumped our strength, you can use your spellcasting modifier. And oh, would you look at that, I have a +3 in wisdom. So that means that if someone gets too close, I can just have my character take the ore and bonk them, which is always fun. Always go for bonking. Next, for actual spells themselves, I chose, you're going to get, by level 3, you have 6 spells you can prepare. You have 4 level 1 spell slots and 2 level 2 spell slots. So for the sake of variety, I'm going to take 4 level 1 spells and 2 level 2 spells. You don't have to take level 2 spells. You don't have to take 2 of them. You could easily take 1 and then just use both spell slots for it. But again, that's entirely up to you. But because you only have level 2 spell slots, you can't take level 3, 4, or 5 spells. You wouldn't be able to cast them anyway because you don't have a spell slot big enough. That is basically just a baked-in scenario for, hey, you're not allowed to do this, so we're going to specifically say you cannot do this. And for that, so for level 1 spells, I think, again, for something that's water-themed, create and destroy water, is a very, iconic one. It does what it says. You can create a certain amount of water or destroy a certain amount of water in a given space, and there's rules to it. Next is Fairy Fire. I feel like Fairy Fire, I think if people read Fairy Fire, they might see it and think, oh, this isn't useful, because I think a lot of people expose it and they're thinking, does this do damage? And no, Fairy Fire does not do damage. But it's really useful to reveal hidden enemies. It's really useful to give your allies advantage. It's really useful to see enemies that are in the dark that you might not necessarily see, which if you're a human, you do not have dark vision, which a lot of races do, but humans very specifically don't. So again, that's a very useful one to have. I went with Detect Magic. Again, it's not a bad one to have. But it's definitely more utility, less combat, but that's fine. Being able to detect magic is going to be useful. I didn't really choose it for any flavor reason. Next is Speak with Animals, because again, if you're a druid, why would you want to not speak with animals? That's like the druid thing to do. It's like if you imagine a druid and you ask what they're doing, if they're not talking to animal, they certainly have like the bird perched on their, finger, which I think is actually a picture in this book with one of them. For level 2 spells, I picked Moonbeam. Again, useful one to have, good offensive capability. It has a few other effects, but, I'm not going to get into that. Again, if you're going to take it, definitely read these spells. I'm just going over, because you don't want to hear me, explain a spell for 5 minutes for several spells. Next is, I went with Heat Metal. Again, there wasn't too much that really kind of fit the theme. There were some, but we'll get into that later when we hit the actual subclass. But Heat Metal is a classic one, because it's like, oh, you're wearing metal armor. Well, here, I'm going to make it unbearably hot, and now you're going to take damage because you have molten armor, wearing on you. Whenever you see an enemy, it's like, ask what kind of armor they're wearing. It's like, oh, it's metal, heat metal. Alright, and so those are the ones that you're going to get with, with the class itself. Next thing you're going to get, we already handled the druidic. Next thing you're going to get is you have to choose a primal order. Now, there's 2 choices. You can either choose Magician, and that says, 1 extra cantrip from the druid spell list. In addition to your mystical connection to nature, you get a bonus to your intelligence, nature, or arcana checks. This bonus equals your wisdom modifier, minimum bonus of +1. So you're always getting at least a +1. But that means, even though I don't have proficiency in them, anything that's, arcana and nature, both intelligence scores, again, it's good we have that +1, because now we're just getting a further bonus. So now, we're getting a +3 on top of that to those. And so we also want to make a note of that when we fill out, all these pluses and minuses. Which usually we skip because, by this point it's easy. It's just, take the one in the box and then add your proficiency if you're proficient in it. Again, you would just have to make sure you remember that you're getting that bonus. And in fact, you could probably even, put that in class features here if you want to remind yourself. We're not going to do that. Next thing that druids get. Oh, and for the cantrip, we're going to go with that. We're going to go with Starry Wisp, which is a ranged attack cantrip. Again, very useful. So now we have a melee ability in case enemies get too close, and then we have Starry Wisp in case we need to attack at a range. Now, next comes Wild Shape. This is pretty much the druid thing. Like, you ask anyone in D&D what they do, what druids do, it's like, oh, they turn into other animals. Now, there's a lot to go over here, but because you're not a moon druid, it's going to be a little less pertinent to you. Because druids have a whole bunch of extra, rules and restrictions. They have more animal forms. But I'll just read a little bit here. The power of nature allows you to assume the form of an animal. As a bonus action, you shapeshift into a beast that you have learned for this feature. See known forms below. You stay in that form for a number of hours equal to half your druid level, or until you use Wild Shape again. Have the incapacitated condition, or die. You can leave the form early as a bonus action. Number of uses: you can use Wild Shape you can use Wild Shape twice. You regain expended use when you finish a short rest, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. You gain additional uses when you reach certain druid levels as shown in the Wild Shape column of the druid's feature. So by the time that you are at level 20, as just any given druid, you have 4 Wild Shape charges, and again, you're getting one of them back on a short rest. Known forms. You know 4 beast forms for this feature, chosen among the beast stat blocks that have a maximum challenge rating of 1/4 and that lack a fly speed, which you can see at the back of the book. The rat, riding horse, spider, and wolf are recommended. So you're basically going to choose which forms you want. You don't have to take those. It just has to be a beast with a 1/4 CR rating and doesn't have fly. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can replace one of your known forms with another eligible form. So again, like you go to sleep, you can wake up and be like, okay, you know what, I don't want to be a horse today. I'm going to choose, like a wolf or something, as long as it meets that CR requirement. When you reach certain druid levels, the number of known forms and the maximum challenge rating for those forms increases, as shown in the B-shaped table. In addition, starting at level 8, you can adopt a form that has a fly speed. So you will eventually get to choose forms that have a fly speed. Your CR, by the time you reach level 8, is going to be a max CR of 1, and that'll have the fly speed, and you'll know 8 forms at that. But at level 3, you just know 4, your max CR is 1/4, and you don't have the fly speed. Then there's rules for when you're shapeshifted. I'm not going to go over those, but essentially there's rules for like how your hit points work, how your game stats work. You can't cast spells, but shapeshifting doesn't break your concentration or otherwise interfere with the spell you've already cast. So you can cast a concentration spell and then wild shape and then keep your concentration on the spell. But then if you lose concentration and you want to keep that spell up, you then have to drop the wild shape and then cast it again. Alright. Wild Companion. You can summon a nature spirit that assumes animal form to aid you. As a magic action, you can expend a spell slot or a useful wild shape to cast Find Familiar spell without material components. When you cast a spell this way, the familiar is fey and disappears when you finish a long rest. So that's our next feature, is the Wild Companion. Alright. Next we go on to subclasses here. And of course we are doing the Circle of the Sea. Druids of the sea draw on the tempestuous forces of oceans and storms. Some view themselves as the embodiments of nature's wrath, seeking vengeance against those who despoil nature. Others seek mystical unity with nature by attuning themselves with the ebb and flow of the tides, following the rush of currents and the waves, listening to the inscrutable whispers and roars of the winds. At level 3, Circle of the Sea spells. When you reach a druid level specified in the Circle of the Sea spells table, thereafter you always have the listed spells prepared. So these also don't count against the spells that you prepare yourself. So in addition to all these that we have from our druid level, at level 3, we are also going to get Fog Cloud, which is pretty much what it sounds. You create a foggy cloud, and that makes it hard to hit things inside. Gust of Wind, also pretty self-explanatory. It's basically going to allow you to push things around, and again, read the spell if you want the details of how that works. Ray of Frost is an attack spell. Again, I think we're mostly we're not necessarily going to go for like a blaster build with this. And especially druids, like they don't normally go with offensive spell casting that often because they do have a lot of very utility spells like Fog Cloud or Fairy Fire. But it's always nice to have an attack spell. Next Shatter is also an attack spell. That's going to do thunder damage, and as is Thunder Wave. So we do have a decent offensive capability, but we also do have a lot of utility. Like we're going to be able to repair items. We're going to be able to make water, which that's going to be useful if you guys are like going through a desert. You can create water for a day. Same thing with Fairy Fire, good utility in battle, even though it's not a directly offensive spell. Detect Magic is going to be useful if you guys are looking for something that's magic. Speak with Animals, that's going to be good because people can get really creative with what they can convince animals to do. Keep in mind that Speak with Animals is not going to allow you to control animals. But what it's going to allow the DM to do is, let's say you want to get knowledge of an enemy base or something. So, you're a druid, you talk to a bird, and so you're going to ask them, some questions, and, the animals might be limited in how much they think, depending on, what their intelligence is. But, you can get a crow. Crows are pretty smart. And you can get them to, maybe, fly over and look around and, then report back to you. But you might have to bribe them. You might have to do some sort of charisma diplomacy check. So again, it's a very useful thing. It's going to open up some possibilities, but keep in mind it is not direct control. You don't just get to tell a wolf to attack or a bird to do something. They're their own animals. They get to choose what they do. So you're going to have to convince them. And then of course Fog Cloud and Gust of Wind are just very useful spells to have. So next thing that we get is what's called Wrath of the Sea. And I will read this one to you because, again, I feel like the Druid can be one of the more complicated, classes to learn because there's so many things to it. Because you have spell casting, you can also be melee, especially if you're a Moon Druid. You have all these rules about what you can and can't turn into, even though you do get more options. But here we have for Wrath of the Sea. As a bonus action, you can spend one use of your wild shape to manifest a 5-foot emanation that takes the form of an ocean spray that surrounds you for 10 minutes. It ends early if you dismiss it, no action required, manifest it again, or have the incapacitation condition. When you manifest the emanation as a bonus action, on your subsequent turn, so not on the first turn that you do, on your subsequent turns, you can choose another creature you see in the emanation. The target must succeed a Constitution saving throw against your spell save DC, or take cold damage, and if the creature is larger or smaller, be pushed up to 15 feet away from you. To determine this damage, roll a number of d6s equal to your Wisdom modifier, minimum of 1 die. So there you go. So basically, just when something gets, you can basically have your kind of water shield up. Whenever something gets in your range, you can just go ahead and go, okay, I don't want you around here, and you can push. And that's also why Shillelagh is another nice one to have, because if you are surrounded by multiple enemies, you can push the one you don't want there away, and then you can, bonk the weaker one, and you can do that, until that one's gone or until backup can arrive. Other thing that we need to do is fill out our spellcasting stuff. So spellcasting modifier is Wisdom for all druids. The spell save DC is going to be 8 plus your Wisdom modifier plus your proficiency bonus. So that's going to be 13. So whenever a spell says, creature has to make a dexterity saving throw, that's the number that they're going to be doing that dexterity saving throw against. Spell attack bonus is again going to be just your Wisdom modifier plus your proficiency bonus. So that's going to be 5. But keep in mind, that's the spell attack bonus. So let's say you do that Shillelagh. So you're going to roll a d20. And of course now you're using your magic modifier, your Wisdom, your spell casting. So you're going to get, so let's say you roll, you get a 15. You're then going to add 5 to it. That's going to make it a dirty 20, just as an example. So again, that's why you're going to want to have that. So that's going to apply to Shillelagh. That's going to apply to, I think Moonbeam's a save. Starry Wisp is going to have that. Ray of Frost is going to have that. I think these two are saves if I remember correctly. So yeah, so we do have that, and that's all of our spells, and that's the only thing that you're going to get as a Circle of the Sea Druid at level 3. Just to give you an idea of what lies ahead after that, if you're more interested in the subclass, at level 6 you get Aquatic Affinity. The size of the emanation you create by your Wrath of the Sea increases to 10 feet. In addition, you gain a swim speed equal to your speed, so now you can swim 30 feet rather than taking the extra hit. Because basically the way it works is if you don't have a swim speed or you don't have a climb speed, then your usage is double. So if you want to climb a 30-foot wall, it's going to take you 2 turns, because it's going to take you 15, your first turn, because you're using twice as much speed, and then 15 your second turn. And that's going to be true for swim speed too, but since you now have a swim speed equal to your land speed, it's going to be you can swim 30 feet in a turn. Level 10, Stormborn. Your Wrath of the Sea confers 2 more benefits while active, as detailed below. Flight. You gain a fly speed equal to your speed. So again, that's going to be a useful one. So basically, this character is going to be, it's not quite as mobile as the 90 feet on the last character I did, the Goliath, but still being able to swim, being able to fly, pretty much just by using a wild shape is a super useful thing to have. You also gain resistance to cold, lightning, and thunder damage. So again, like anything that allows you to take less damage is going to be good in your book. At level 14, Oceanic Gift. Instead of manifesting the emanation of Wrath of the Sea around yourself, you can manifest it around one willing creature within 60 feet of yourself. That creature gains all the benefits of the emanation and uses your spell save DC and wisdom modifier for it. In addition, you can manifest the emanation around both of the other creature and yourself if you expend 2 uses of your wild shape instead of 1 when manifesting it. So essentially what you can do, and the wording of that is very specific, because you can't choose 2 other creatures, so you can't do 2 allies. It has to be another creature and yourself. But again, that's still a useful thing to have. If you have that character that you're trying to protect, you can put that emanation around them and allow them to push, other creatures' way, either until they can, gain the advantage on them numerically, or until backup can come and, help them out. So yeah, so this is Ina. I couldn't really think of a good last name. I imagine they're one of those characters where like they just have the first name. They're kind of a wanderer. They really don't have a family. But yeah, so I would definitely give them the ore for the weapon and either flavor it as a quarterstaff or a club, and then use the shillelagh if you want to use that as a sort of melee option for your build. So yeah, there we go. We've made another level 3 druid. Let me actually, I'm trying to remember what we have left for classes. I think we have paladin still. Let me see here. So let's see here. So let's see. We've done a bard yet because we did Mudang as the bard. We still need to do a cleric. We've done a monk. We still need to do paladin. I don't think we've done a ranger yet. We definitely haven't done a sorcerer or a warlock. And I don't think we've done a... Have we done a wizard? No, that's right, because we did the divination wizard, I believe. And then for species, we need to do an Aasimar. We need to do a dragonborn. We need to do a dwarf. We need to do a halfling. And we need to do a tiefling, yeah. So that all adds up. So yeah, be looking forward to those in the future. As always, thank you for joining me on another roll call. And as always, keep doing what makes you awesome. Go ahead and drop a like and subscribe. That definitely helps the channel. I'm really trying to push that. I don't like to be the guy that asks for likes and subscriptions, but I do want to get this channel off the ground. And again, like hopefully one day I can like monetize this and not have to work at a fuel center. But until then, thanks for joining me. You guys have a good one, and goodbye.